Okay, this presentation comes from the Land and Water Use Standard in AP Environmental Science, which is standard number 4. It's approximately 10 to 15% of the AP Environmental Science test. We're starting with the section of land and water use that is titled Agriculture. Agriculture is extremely important because this is how we feed the growing population. This is a very appropriate topic considering that we just came out of the human population unit. Human populations are currently growing, which means that we need to find increasing ways to produce food for individuals worldwide. One of the basic needs of the human population is nutrition. Agriculture plays an important role in providing the food resources needed. Food resources extend beyond human populations and also into providing the food requirements for livestock and other animals used for human needs. In order to understand human nutrition, we need to talk about human nutrient requirements. Good nutrition is necessary to allow for brain growth and function, normal daily activity, and to have a good natural defense system against disease, or a good immune system. Unfortunately, young children are most vulnerable to the effects of malnutrition. This is because their bodies are growing, their brains are rapidly growing, and their immune systems are underdeveloped. Therefore, they are susceptible to things that commonly don't affect most individuals. Let's look at a few key facts from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Approximately 805 million people suffer from chronic hunger. 161 million children under the age of 5 have stunted growth due to lack of nutrition. 3.4 million people die each year due to factors related to being overweight or obese. And the cost of malnutrition is approximately $3.5 trillion per year. To put this into perspective, the current U.S. national debt is $16.8 trillion. Food equality is variable globally. Often we mention it as food inequality because we find that many people have access to food, but many more people do not have access to sustainable nutrients. We have to start with socioeconomic disparities, which would include looking at things such as the differences between upper middle class and upper class societies, and looking at lower class and developing nations. Even within the United States, we see socioeconomic disparity in terms of access to nutrition. It tends to be the case that many people, and it tends to be related not only to poverty, but more so to education, they do not have access to or do not understand how to find access to the food resources that they need. Basically, they could walk into the same grocery store that you or I do and perhaps not be able to figure out what would be a nutritious diet. That's just within the US. We also have problems with food distribution worldwide. Food distribution is first of all hit by a lack of markets. Especially in developing countries, there may not be places for individuals to sell the food that they develop. This is especially concerning when you look at the statistic that approximately 25 to 50% of food produced in developing nations never makes it to market in the first place. This is because the food is perishable. The second reason is that the food becomes contaminated on its way to market by bacteria, fungi, or just any sort of other microorganism. When 25 to 50% of the food never even reaches these people who need these resources so badly, we can understand that the consequences would be severe. Other problems with food distribution, a very large problem, is infrastructure. Many developing countries do not have ways to get food from one location to another. By the time the food actually reaches the market, we go back to our second issue, which had to do with perishability and contamination. We also have problems with corruption in countries that are actually using food distribution from organizations such as the World Food Program. The food may reach the country, but it may not actually reach the people who live in those countries. Food is often sold as a commodity in order to gain other things, or food is used as leverage to obtain things from other people against their will. Finally, food inequality is related to ecosystem pressures. If we look at the history of the United States, we can remember that in the western United States, we used to have much open range land that could be used by anyone. Most of that has been fenced off or has been taken over by the U.S. government, who then leases it to individuals who can afford to graze cattle or other livestock on that land. This is a problem in developing nations as well, because there are increasingly fewer opportunities for people to use the resources that are available from the prospect of land. What used to be open pasture, open savanna, is now often limited by fences or by claims of ownership, so individuals may not have access to those particular areas. So there are a lot of questions about open versus restricted land and the impact on human populations. There also are problems with water data. Not enough data currently are being collected on how water is being distributed in developing countries especially. There's an inefficiency in terms of water use. Much water is wasted as it is attempted to be irrigated for crop systems or for use in livestock, and there may be distribution systems in place that cannot be sustained and because of simple problems such as salination, which would be salt contaminating the water, or evaporation. By far the biggest problem in developing nations is safe drinking water. In the United States, most individuals at least have access to clean drinking water provided through sanitized plumbing. In developing nations, people will get water from wherever they can. Many wells are contaminated, and people who don't have access to wells actually may get their water from streams and rivers, which are also contaminated by livestock and humans using them for bathing and cleaning and even for restrooms. The final ecosystem pressure is the need for technology and training. There are many systems in place that allow for better agriculture or better water or better heating through solar or other resources that are actually accessible to people, but these things are not necessarily available in developing countries. So therefore, people use very old, very primitive forms of cooking and heating.